guys. Welcome to AskALLi Self-Publishing Advice podcast. I'm your new host, Jyotsna Ramachandran. I'm the founder of Happy Self-Publishing. And please welcome my co-host, Iain Rob Wright. Hi, Iain. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. I'm a horror author primarily. I've been a full-time self-published author for the last 6 years. And I also run the free self-publishing website advice course, which is A to Z of self-publishing.
That's awesome. So you are from the UK, right? I can make out from your British accent.
Yeah. Your English is a lot better than my, is it Punjab that India speaks primarily? Or
in India, our common language is Hindi. But we learn English at school. So that's our first language. So
well, we're supposed to learn French and German at English schools, but very few of us speak it. We're not very good at languages in this country.
So we both are going to be co-hosting this beginner salon from now on, right? So could you tell us a little bit about your background? When did you start this whole thing about self-publishing and becoming an author?
Well, like most authors, I've always wanted to be a writer ever since, I was a young boy, and I've always been an avid reader. So it's always kind of been my dream job. But when I published my first book via KDP, which was the final winter in May 2011, I was actually working as a telephone salesman. I've been doing that for several years, and I was really unhappy with sort of where I was in life. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't finish university. I wasn't, doing a high level job, and I always felt like I was intelligent enough to do something better. And my dream was to publish a book and be a writer, like Stephen King, who was my idol. I'd written this book as a hobby in my spare time. It had taken me a year writing it in the evenings, and I wanted to get it published so that I could, move away from being a phone salesman. And while I was Googling, I must have come across sort of Amazon's KDP, and it was a big thing at the moment, and they just started the 70% royalty, and there was a bit of excitement about it. So I threw my book up there, hoping to make some money from it. And within 6 months, that one book was making me more money every month than my previous job was. So I didn't ever go back to selling phones, and that was the last time I ever had to work for anybody else. And every book I've written since has kind of kept me at a level where this is what I do for a job now. So it'll be 7 years in May, I think, that I've been doing this. So a long time now, and I keep waiting for the penny to drop and something to happen, and I have to go back and get a job, but it hasn't happened yet. So I'm just enjoying it sort of while it's happening. What about yourself? Have you had a similar story? Or?
Yeah, a little similar, but I never considered myself to be an author. And first of all, I must tell you, Iain, your story is so inspiring. I'm sure for all the newbie authors who are, watching us today, it's going to be really encouraging, because people think that this is some kind of a side business. But if you work hard, and you've written 19 to 20 books, right?
Yeah.
So it can become a full-time thing. And something similar happened to me as well, Iain. I actually quit my full-time job 6 years ago, and I was trying out different businesses because I realized that we have so much freedom when we are on our own. So I was trying out different things, and all my businesses were growing, but the biggest change in my life happened, and my daughter was born 4 years ago. So I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I didn't want to keep running around and attend client meetings. So I started searching the internet. I started Googling how to make money online and stuff like that. And very often I was hearing this thing about Kindle publishing, Amazon, self-publishing. And these were the terms that were coming up again and again. And I started finding out what is all this about. Back then, I never considered myself to be an author. So I tried to take a different route where I started hiring people to write books on topics which I thought were, profitable. So I would just find some good trending topics, find a writer, and quickly put together a book. Today, when I look back at those days 4 years ago, I'm really not proud of some of the books I published. But the good thing was, at that time, there were not too many books on Amazon. So even if the book was of average quality, it was still selling. And that was very motivating for me, because within 6 months, I published 50 books, and the royalties that I was earning, I was making some $4,000 to $5,000. And for the kind of lifestyle we have in India, the cost of living is much less here. So was making me more money than my other businesses. So I shut all that down, and I was focusing on putting out more and more books on Amazon. And I was removing the books that were not great. I was trying to improve the quality. And that's when my friends started asking me, hey, you have a kid and you're doing something from home. I know you're making money. So what is it all about? So that inspired me to write my book, Job Escape Plan. And that's when I got the confidence that, hey, I have the ability to take my story and write it into a book. And that was the last time I published a book written by somebody else. And since Job Escape Plan, I started helping other authors because I realized how fulfilling it is to write your own book, get great reviews about it. And people write to me saying, hey, I left my job after reading this book. And I never expected that. I just thought people would get some inspiration, but people were actually taking action. And that was a great experience. So I thought that there are so many people who have much more inspiring and important messages to share with the world. So luckily I had this team with me, team of designers, editors, formatters, everyone you need to publish a book. So I just took that team, converted that into Happy Self-Publishing. And now we have served 300 authors from 25 different countries to publish their books. So that's my journey in short.
Great. It's kind of the opposite to sort of my own, in that I came at it from wanting to be an author.
Yeah.
Where you've been writing for market and trying to make money from the business model. So sort of with shows there's various paths to success in self-publishing. But I also found something similar to yourself 6 years ago. It was much easier to compete, in the quality of most self-published books was very poor.
Yeah.
And I know that my first couple of novels, the quality of those compared to what I write now, it was much lower. And potentially if I was starting today, I would have a much harder time sort of finding that success than I did 6 years ago. I think I was lucky that I got into it at a time when the success was there for anybody to grab. And by the time things got harder, I'd already established myself. So it's definitely tougher for new authors to get success now. And I don't necessarily think they'll get the same quick success that we did. And I think it's a much longer road now. You have to have a business plan. You have to be persistent and keep at it, and just focus on not necessarily getting success overnight, but just improving each month, maybe starting with $5 in month 1 and making $10 in month 2, and just slowly progress forwards until you do get to that place where you want to be. And it's a shame that it's not as easy nowadays as it was for us 6 years ago, but it's still certainly doable. There are people sort of making successes of themselves, and I think that the key thing now is to know the right way of doing things so that you don't waste too much time on things that don't want to.
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of things have changed in the last 6 years. So what would be your advice to people who are just starting out, and what are the things that you have noticed has changed for you and your books in the last couple of years?
Visibility doesn't happen on its own anymore. I think 6 years ago when I published my first book, straight away it was making a couple of $1,000s a month on its own, and I wasn't doing anything. I just published it and put it up there, and it started to get reviews, and Amazon were pushing it. But there was about 400,000 ebooks on KDP then, and there's several million now, including from large traditional publishers like Stephen King in my genre. So it's very, very hard now to get your books seen, and that's where a lot of the work for an author comes in now. It's having to proactively do things so that readers find your book. And I think a few years ago you could just write a book and publish it, and the sales would kind of take care of themselves. I think the last few years, because it's got a lot tougher. You've got things like Facebook advertising now, and BookBub and things like that, and growing a mailing list so that when you have a new book out, you can email readers that enjoy your work. And all these things are very important to make a living from writing now. You can't really avoid doing them. So I think it's very important now that if you want to be a self-publisher, you don't think that it's just an overnight dream of you publish a book and you become famous. It's very much now like any other business. If you want to set up a bakery, you can't just make bread and then make a load of money. You have to think, right, I want my bakery to be the best, so I'm going to start small and I'm going to find customers, I'm going to advertise, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make sure my bread is the best. And and you have to grow your business in self-publishing from the ground up, and it's not going to start as an overnight success. It's going to start as a small business that nobody knows about, that readers don't know about, and it's your job to make readers find your work. And I think that's the most important part of, if you want to be a success as an author, that's the most important part, is to realise that you've got to now find readers and bring them to you rather than just hope they find you.
Absolutely, yeah. I find the same kind of trends with nonfiction books as well, Ian. Before, as you rightly mentioned, you just put out a couple of books and you forget about it for 6 months and money would still come into your bank account. But things have changed now, and authors have to look at their book as a business and themselves as a business owner, rather than just, an author who writes whenever he has nothing else to do. So I think that kind of seriousness is really important these days. And a couple of things that I tell my clients all the time is, as you rightly said, we can't just wait for people to find you on Amazon. So we tell our guys, like, go out, go to different podcasts, get yourself booked at stages to speak, and get people from outside Amazon to come to your book. So don't just wait for some just improving the keyword or just improving the category, because everybody is doing that, right? So you need to be one step ahead of the others. So that's really important. And another trend that we see is, before, royalties were good enough, but now I feel royalty is just like the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more which can be used, which can be really capitalized, and which a lot of authors are not aware. For example, having some kind, especially for nonfiction, a book can be easily converted to an online course if it's like a how-to kind of a book. So they must use the book as the first step to sell something bigger. So if they are able to think ahead of time and put that together, then royalties can keep coming, but you can have a coaching or a consulting kind of a business which comes through the book. So yeah, a lot of things have changed, but I don't think the new authors should feel disheartened that competition is too high, because they can try out a lot of new things.
It is a business now, but it's still, one of the best businesses in the world. I mean, I get to work at home, I get to have whatever holiday I want, I get to spend time with my children, and I get to do what I love for most of the time. Most of my day is spent writing books, which is what I want to do. So it is a business, and it does have some parts of it which are stressful, but it's still one of the best businesses in the world to do, because you don't have to answer to anyone but yourself. So I can't say to a new author, that it's an easy road to take, but it's definitely a fulfilling one, and it's worthwhile, and it can change your life in wonderful ways if you manage to find the success.
Absolutely. And I think I love this online nature of this entire business, because for people like you and me who have a family, who want to be at home or be at any other part of the world, it's such a blessing. And I think we just have to be thankful for that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Let's move on to the core topic for today's episode, Ian. So the previous host did an amazing job of touching upon the writing and cover design and editing. So once the book is edited, the very next step is the production, right? So what are some of the trends that you see? What are some of the tools that you would advise indies to use for the production, which is formatting the ebook first?
There's several methods, and over the last 6 years, the way I format my ebooks and paperbacks is definitely evolved. And it depends if you've got money you want to invest up front, or if you want to do things at as low a cost as possible. And generally, if you spend a bit of money, you'll make life easier for yourself. But if it's important that you save money, there are easy and free options. So I mean, what I think a lot of authors are still resorting to is using Word. And that's my first sort of 7 or 8 books were formatted using Word and uploaded directly as a Word document. And that isn't going to cost most people anything, because they already have Word. But the downside of Word is that it's not designed primarily to write sort of ebooks and things for publishing online. So it's not streamlined or efficient in any way that's going to help an author, which means there's a lot of additional work required to get the ebook how you want it to be. And there's a learning curve with using Word that most authors will have to go on Google and look at guides for how to format table of contents and things like that. So that's not going to cost any money, but it does require more work. And that's how most authors start out, I believe, because they don't want to risk any money, or they don't have the money. But as you do start to bring in profits from your writing, one of the best ways you can invest it is on sort of ebook formatting programs. So the one I use is on the Apple Mac, and it's called Vellum. And that's as simple as dragging over your Word document and letting it do its magic, and it pretty much does everything for you with only a few manual tweaks that you need to make. And recently they added a paperback function as well, which allows you to also output a PDF file ready for sort of CreateSpace or Lightning Source or whatever print on demand service you're using. So my recommendation is Vellum, but it does cost £250. So if you're not ready to spend that yet, then you can use Word or sort of Open Office and things like that. It really it depends sort of what you want to do. Do you want the time saving that you'll get by using Vellum, or do you want to save the money by doing things with Word or a free alternative? But there's several options, and there's no right or wrong. HTML ebooks are quite a simple format, so once you understand the basics, it's pretty easy to use any program and get the design that you want. I mean, what do you use yourself, Jyotsna?
Yeah, what I do is I give it to my team members because they are pros at it.
That's the easiest. That's the most expensive option for most people, is to pay somebody else to do it. But again, that's even easier.
Yeah, especially for authors, who are not sure if they're going to write multiple books so that they can invest in a good software. They could just, hire somebody. There are so many good ones, even on websites like Fiverr and Upwork. So you could see their previous work, and that would be a fraction of the amount that you pay for a software. But if you are a pro like Iain, so then you could obviously buy a software and do it yourself if you have the time. What people don't understand is most first-time authors think that if they've written a book in a Word format, it's just about converting it to ebook. It's not just about that. There's a lot of small little design elements that get involved in formatting your book well. And this is really important because I feel that most customers on Amazon will click on the look inside feature. So they would look at the first few pages, and most people you can easily figure out if it has been done by the author themselves, because you will not be knowing the right kind of fonts to use, the right kind of header, footer for your CreateSpace book, and even small little things like how do you use a divider between your chapter name and the actual body. And it's nice to use things like a drop cap. It's nice to use a pull quote. So these are little things which indies will probably miss out if they are doing it for the first time and trying and doing it themselves. But as you rightly said, if you don't have a huge budget, then spend some time in learning it and doing it yourself. But if you have the resources, then it's really worth it to invest either in a person to do it or in a good software that can really take up the standard of your book to the next level. Because your content could be amazing, but if it looks bad, then it's really going to hurt your sales, right?
Yeah, and I've used Fiverr in the past for other things, and generally you do get pretty good products from whoever's doing it for you. I've had sort of artwork done by people in the Philippines that's been really great, and even some of the marketing services on there are quite good. But yeah, I think Fiverr's a good place to look, and there's other places online like your own services as well.
Sure.
But yeah, if you are going to use Word, it's imperative you learn how to use it properly, because the thing with Word is it's more complicated than it needs to be, and you need to learn how to be very very simple with Word, and you remove a lot of the formatting which you might use usually for a business letter or things. You never want to press tab, and you want to use the style sheets and things which most people won't understand how to do. So it's important that if you are going to do the route of Word and not spend any money, that you at least spend the time learning how to use it correctly.
Exactly, yeah. Another thing I wanted to touch upon is a lot of times when people use freelancers, the freelancer must have got great feedback, a lot of great reviews, but when you hire them, they end up doing a horrible job, and you wonder why is that. So I feel that as authors, it's our job to give proper instructions to people because they may not know everything about your book. So I think authors should probably do a little bit of research in seeing how the other best-selling books in that particular genre are formatted, and probably take some screenshots and and do some little bit of research and send that to the formatter so that they get an idea about what you expect. And if you can actually help them to improve their standards. So they may have a fixed template or a fixed format of doing things, but if you are specific that these are the kind of fonts I like, this is the kind of style I want, this is the kind of images I want, then it can help them get a better understanding of what you want. So you will get better results if you give better instructions.
I think certainly if you're publishing non-fiction and you've got things like maybe charts or a lot of lists and things, those are very difficult to do. So if you are writing non-fiction in a sort of a textbook type of thing, then that's when I would probably advise you get some professional help. I know how to format fiction books very easily, but that's because they don't have a lot of the advanced formatting that a textbook or a non-fiction book might require, and there might be images and things that you need to embed in a non-fiction book. So certainly for non-fiction, it's probably even more important that you seek out a professional.
Absolutely, especially when there are too many images and things like that, because there are a lot of technical stuff which is just beyond the understanding of an author, like the file size. Because a client of mine, he had like 200 images for his cookbook, and before he came to us, he actually did it himself, and Amazon said that the file size is too much and he couldn't run his 99-cent promotion because Amazon didn't let him price it at that price point. And it was the promotion he planned got messed up because he didn't know that he had to reduce the size of the images without spoiling the quality of the image. So as you said, if there are too many images and charts and graphs, then you cannot compromise on the quality, but you have to somehow reduce the image. So people do waste a lot of time doing that. So if your book is simple, you can try and do it yourself. But if it has all these complex elements, it's better to go with a professional. That's what I think. And what do you think about the difference between ebook and paperback production, Iain?
For a long time, paperbacks used to be a massive time drain for me. I started out by formatting a Word document and converting that into a PDF and using that for Create Space, but that was always, it was never ideal, and it took a lot of work. And the headers and footers were difficult to get correct because you had to create sections so that you wouldn't have headers and footers on sort of front and back matter, and it was a lot to learn, and it was always a very time-consuming task. After that, I moved on to Adobe InDesign, which is pretty much as professional as you can get with creating a paperback, and that's what the traditional New York and London publishers would use themselves. They would use Adobe InDesign with a professional that knows how to use that. So for a long time, I started using that. But again, that could be quite time consuming. There's a lot of tweaks that you have to make on Adobe InDesign and all sorts of things you need to do that aren't automatic. Nowadays, again, using Vellum, they've recently added a paperback feature to it that automatically does many of the things that you will need to do. And it will just spit out a PDF file for you that's perfect and that's already done. And it does that alongside your ebook file. So I don't have to do any separate work to create a paperback anymore. I just put everything into Vellum and it'll give me every file that I need. So again, that's something I've paid for. And as a professional, that time saving is vital to me. So I was happy to spend the £250 to get all that time back, because I'm publishing 3, 4, maybe 5 books a year. That pays for itself in the amount of time I save. Again, if you're trying to save money, then again, look at maybe Fiverr, or if you are going to do it yourself, paperback's even harder if you're going to use Word. It really can go wrong. So definitely, it's if you want an ebook and paperback file, then maybe there's even more reason to get a professional to help you with it. It's going to be a lot of work and a lot of things you need to learn if you want to do it yourself. But again, if you're willing to learn and spend that time learning, you can do it yourself as well.
True, yeah. One more thing, what we do is when clients need both ebook and paperback, we first start off with the paperback formatting. Actually, that's a lot easier. So we do that, and we first send the first chapter so that, it's a lot easier to make revisions in the styling in one chapter rather than just sending the entire file and then revising the whole book. So I would suggest that to authors, because instead of wasting time spending weeks in formatting, it can actually just take a couple of days or a few hours if you're a pro at it. So get the first chapter done, be happy with the format, and then get the complete paperback done. And then once we are finalizing the paperback version, then we convert it for the ebook. And for ebook,
Yeah.
do you prefer EPUB or a Mobi file?
Well, Vellum that I use gives me both. It'll give
Mm-hmm.
me a Mobi file and an EPUB, so I'll just download, upload whichever platform I'm using.
Yeah. For Amazon, I think EPUB is better, right? Or do you have another?
Well, with Amazon,
Oh, sorry, Mobi is better, is what I
I
feel.
upload a Mobi file that's been
Yeah.
created by Vellum. But prior to that, I would always upload a Word document saved as a HTML file, and I would upload those to the various platforms. So I've
Right.
never really used EPUB, to be honest.
Yeah.
Vellum creates one for me, and if I do publish on Apple
Uh-huh.
or Barnes and Noble, then I will use an EPUB file.
Exactly. I think I have tried Smashwords and Draft to
Yeah,
Digital. So those guys I specifically ask for an EPUB file. So I think only
yeah,
during those, for that you need the EPUB, right?
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
But they will also, I believe, let you upload a Word document as well. If you don't have a way of creating an end ebook file, then you can upload your Word document, although the results won't be as good.
Yeah. I think there's just a minor difference between a Word file and a Mobi and an EPUB.
I think a Mobi is basically an EPUB file, but Amazon have put their own sort of DRM into it to make it exclusive to their platform. But I think in nature, they're both pretty similar. They're just HTML formats, really.
Exactly. So when it comes to choosing the dimensions, the size of the book, so do you have any recommendations for fiction books?
Well, for fiction books, I want to keep the printing costs as low as possible. So I go for 5x8 as my dimensions, which tends to be, it's a little bit bigger than a mass market paperback, but only slightly. So it's small, sort of easily sort of handheld format that most people are going to want to have for a fiction book that they're going to spend hours with.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you're doing non-fiction, then a larger format might be better because you've got images and things like that. So for fiction, I definitely try to keep the printing costs down because that allows me to either charge less for the book or make a higher royalty. So 5x8 is what I've used most recently. I have also done 6x9 in the past, which seems a bit more like a limited edition book. It's a bit more of a book that someone might want on their shelf because it looks nicer and so there are options and they're not dissimilar in printing costs, but 5x8 I think is the most similar I can get to a mass market paperback, which is what I want to emulate. I want to make the book cheap and easy to read.
Right. So what we recommend is for the nonfiction category, some authors write very short books, which are less than 20,000 words. And when they make it 6x9, it looks wafer thin. So it really looks bad when you give it to a client. So we tell them to go with a 5x8 so that the page count would increase. It's actually the opposite of what you want, right? You want your cost to reduce. These guys don't mind increasing the cost as long as it looks like a book. So if the book is too short, but if the book is substantial, maybe 30 to 40,000 words or above, then we go for 6x9. So that looks nicer. So it's actually a personal choice. And when it comes to paperback, is CreateSpace your number one choice, or have you tried paperback using KDP?
I've slowly started shifting everything over to KDP print just because it's simpler for me. I know that there's a couple of downsides to KD print at the moment, so they don't use the expanded distribution to libraries and retail outlets. But to be honest, making sales on those routes on CreateSpace is very rare anyway. Most of your sales are going to come from Amazon's website, so you're not going to lose a great deal of revenue by losing those functions. And Amazon KDP have said that they will eventually add those expanded distribution sources anyway. So eventually they're going to be in line with one another in that they're identical, but KDP print, because it's integrated with the KDP dashboard and because it takes all of the metadata from your ebook and shifts it over, it's just a lot easier. So for new authors, I would say use KD print because it seems quite obvious to me that Amazon are eventually going to try and migrate everything towards that anyway. I think CreateSpace has been great, and certainly for the last 6 years, I think that's probably been the number one choice for most self-published authors. It's been quite easy to use. Amazon have done well promoting it and making sure authors know about it. But I think the future is going to be KDP print, because there'd be no reason for Amazon to launch it if they weren't eventually thinking of replacing CreateSpace, because why would they have both platforms? So rather than have to change in a later date when Amazon suddenly announce they're going to close CreateSpace in 12 months' time and everyone needs to move, just get into the habit of using KDP print now, I think.
Right. So indies rock, right? So yeah. So I hope you guys found this show useful. So we'll see you next month with yet another episode.